You've heard about how to make comics the Marvel way? Well, today we're learning how to make comics the Michel Fiffe way with Creating Copra. Hey comic heads, welcome back to Dangerous Comics. I'm your host, Dane Georges. Now, there have been a lot of great how-to books about comics, and today we're going to talk about a book that's no different. We're looking at Michel Fiffe's Creating Copra. This just came out, and it's the definitive DIY guide to making and self-publishing comics. I love the description on the back, too, a little bit of what it covers. But it is a step-by-step tour of Studio Copra, a personal in-depth account that covers everything from filling up a blank page to managing a small business, writing, penciling, inking, lettering, coloring, packaging, distributing, selling, cultivating relationships, building a catalog, and putting artistic muscle to the test. So if you have any doubt of what this covers or if this book is for you, I think that list kind of covers it all and lets you know what to kind of expect with this book. It's a really, really great collection. This is kind of a collection of posts that Michel originally did on his Patreon and made an actual book for all of us artists that need a little help and want to see how this prolific artist, Michel Fiffe, has kind of done his career, what steps he's taken, how he's kind of like looking back on his career and what he would do differently. And it's really just an amazing package. And this was made possible from Koyama Provides and then started to sell it on his Etsy account. So you can hit that up, still has copies available, but I just wanted to do a brief highlight and overview of what this book is about. Well, this book covers a lot of skills and processes that maybe you could find in some of these other how-to books that I'm showing here. This one really delves into like Michel Fiffe's process specifically and how Fiffe approaches making comics. Overall, you're almost getting like a artist edition of Copra. For those of you out there that aren't familiar with Copra, this was a series that Fiffe started back in 2012 and is now up to issue 45, going to be starting the next arc of 46 through 50. So really hitting some big milestones with this series. This book kind of charts that whole journey that Michel has had. And here's some of the chapters that we have. We get concept and plot, writing, layouts and pencils, lettering, inking, coloring, process review, self-publishing, and then escape/return to self-publishing. And we will kind of talk about it later in the book too, but wanted to show off this just amazing master collection that Image Comics put out. When Fiffe made the deal with Image, they started to kind of take over some of the publications or the collections, trade paperbacks as well, the rounds of Copra that they would put out. But this book has such a unique look in just how Fiffe is approaching the line art, the coloring, just every attention to detail, the lettering. It's such a beautiful book and such a unique kind of voice in comics that I think it's really cool to be able to see a little bit more behind the scenes of how some of this is done and just kind of getting this really great step-by-step review from the artist himself in our Creating Copra. So we're going to just kind of give a brief highlight overview of all what we can expect in this book, but get a great introduction, kind of summing up what we're going to expect, and then just kind of going into Fiffe's process really, and how they do sketches, how they're laying out their plots, writing, and kind of just how Fiffe doesn't really do a lot of like actually sitting at the keyboard, typing stuff up, kind of keeping stuff loose, writing on pieces of paper, wanting to kind of tie things back and be very loose and maybe not so formal and tying himself down right away. But love kind of where we're just seeing kind of like this art in black and white. And then we're getting to see the layouts, the pencils. And in here, we really learn a lot about Fiffe's process with this and how he's really going after this with very loose pencils, and so much of the drawing that he does is in the ink. And we really get to see that in depth here as we're seeing these very loose pencils. And I think is really kind of freeing to everybody about like, oh, there's not one way to do this. And I think maybe, you read How to Draw Comics the Marvel Way. It's a very one-to-one of like, this is how you make comics. But when you're looking at all these different how-tos, and especially this one, you're seeing it's really how you think and how you make comics and really open to the creator's interpretation and do what works for you. Do what works to make the best book. So just getting how we're doing layouts, just seeing these thumbnails, seeing kind of how loose they can be and how open to interpretation. Love these kind of looks at kind of unique page layouts and how letting the kind of like storytelling and word balloons kind of lead us down the page. And how when it's one creator doing this, writing, drawing, coloring, lettering, they really do have that control to like, hey, maybe the color is going to help guide you through the page. Hey, maybe the lettering's going to. But really, really cool to see these layouts because Fiffe has such a unique kind of ink line. It's really cool to see kind of that framework that's under there and how he gets to this final product. Really, really cool. And just really cool to see how loose this is. And I mean, I think you always hear people when they talk about, oh, I can't draw. It's like, oh, I can't even draw a stick figure. And it's like, well, you don't need to be able to draw this right away. It's like, it starts with this, right? It starts with kind of like that loose interpretive, like stick figure kind of, and then builds up how you build that framework on it. So really love this. And then getting into lettering, because I think Fiffe's lettering is so unique too. I love how he calls out like how he wants to do these chapter titles and then how that will kind of reflect the whole issue. And then how kind of we can have some messing up of the lettering, how I can use the lettering really as a storytelling method as well too. In all of Copra, you can really see like is a love letter of Fiffe to comics, how we kind of have like some Jack Kirby, like an Orion kind of character here, Deadshot kind of character, but really, really cool. This is another one of just showing how, oh, you can have these panels pretty eclectically, pretty like erratically placed, but then it's how you use the lettering to guide the eye down the page. And also just really cool like logo designs. Another one, this is like really reminds me of maybe like some Frank Miller Sin City kind of layouts or how Frank would approach lettering, but really, really cool. And cool to see this also as well of like very quick photo that he took just to kind of like get the idea of it and then what it turned into, like a whole page of just lettering. And then inking and kind of getting into like, this is Fiffe's favorite part of the drawing process. And I think this is the coolest thing of like these two different approaches that he could take, you know? And this is kind of his more normal, and this is a more cleaned up, maybe like 90s Scott Williams kind of like inking style. But so cool to see how like an artist's hand and really how you want to like approach the inking, the drawing. It can all be story by story and book by book, but how much that really adds to the storytelling as well is really, really interesting. Amazing. Like, I want to see like this kind of oversized edition of Fiffe's pages. Like, I want to see and pour over this kind of like line art, try to see the penciling under there. I think this is so cool seeing just these kind of process pictures. But then getting into coloring, which I think is something that Michel Fiffe does really unique stuff on. He does a lot with color pencils, and then we'll bring that into Photoshop and do some other maybe color holds or maybe like color blocks, but a lot of that texture in there is actually color pencils and kind of physical media. Then we get this really cool process overview, just kind of putting everything that we learned together. I love this kind of seeing that like really one-to-one of like the original page, so then after it's in Photoshop and everything, still can see how we've got color pencil on there. And also Fiffe is telling us how he puts the color pencil on the actual page. So it's not like he's doing an overlay of it. A big part of what he's talking about here is just how he has to make this book monthly. And so to do that, he's not cutting any corners. He's doing stuff on the page. He's fixing it where he can, but he's moving quick. The whole thing is get a page done, move on to the next page, and learn on the next page, learn on the next book, and kind of keep it going. You can't really stop. And I think that's a really unique thing about the comic making process and comic art in general. And then I think we get to the most important section of the whole book about self-publishing and, going into some stuff about proofreading, printer selection, subscription and retailers, shipping, and general management. And there's some amazing tidbits. And I think everyone watching this that wants to make comics, is currently making comics, is self-publishing their own comics, can learn something from this section. And I'm not going to get into it or kind of ruin what we're talking about here, but this is just an amazing analysis of what goes into things. When I was reading this, it gave me so many ideas of what I could be doing better with my own comics. And, like really having this relationship with the your subscribers, through the website, and then also having the relationship with the retailers, how he's reaching out to comic shops and trying to send them mailers and trying to get people that have never read Copra reading Copra, or shops that have never ordered Copra ordering Copra. You really have to build that relationship, reach out, keep it going, and you really do have to wear a lot of hats. So it kind of gets in here as well about where you can kind of get someone else to help you, try to get help where you can, but then also, do what you have to get the job done. And kind of just also cool stuff about learning from past projects and bringing that into the current thing, issue with shipping, how difficult it is shipping overseas, how you're always going to have copies come in that are damaged, general management about just how you store things at your house, how you're shipping things out, going to the post office. And also just it goes into really great things about pricing, and you really need to kind of be thinking forward of like, you can't be underselling yourselves. You want to actually make a profit with this, and even though you maybe want to keep an affordable price point, it is also very important to like make your money back on this and not be like going into the red every time you print a new book. And also getting into like his whole journey and like escaping to Image when they would make some of these other stuff for him, but then also really cool analysis of like what it is like to work with Image, because I don't think there's a ton of information out there or just like general talk of like what that relationship with like a publisher like Image Comics is like. And really from what Fife goes into here, it really is like he does this amazing side-by-side of what it's the benefits of Copra Press to Image Comics, and so like self-publishing versus like being with a publisher house like Image. So with like self-publishing or Copra and specific, off-the-grid activity and limited distribution with potential for growth, 100% profits but reduced exposure, financially safer unless you mismanage funds, control of product within smaller pool, obsessiveness that feeds isolation and vice versa. Decisions are made lightning fast. And then Image Comics, plugged into the system, and its inherent promise of expansive distribution. So, connected to all these shops. You're in the preview guide. You're getting your books shown all around the country to shop owners. Fees per publication with risk of underperforming, opposite of financially safer unless you have a hit book. At the mercy of a larger landscape and working with a team of helpful professionals, planning requires more lead time. So it is kind of getting into like you're paying fees to go through Image, and maybe they're like taking that out of the royalties or other things. So you do need to have your book performing a certain way to actually be in the black with that. It's not like work for hire with Marvel or DC where they're just gonna like pay you for your book and then say thank you, and kind of work out the fees like that. It's Image, you are kind of paying into it, and then so there's this. I think this is like super beneficial just seeing that, and the rest of this goes into some great just what it's like to work with a company like Image. So really beneficial stuff, and then more sketches, other books you can find by Michelle, and you really can't go wrong picking up any issue of Copra. So I really think everyone that's watching this video needs to order this book so they can read it for themselves. You're going to just devour it very quickly like I did as well. It's an amazing read. It's worth the price of entry, and I think it's going to help your practice. It's going to help how you make comics, how you think about your business, and all that. So I think this really is the definitive guide to making and self-publishing comics, and specifically that self-publishing aspect. It's really important to talk about it for other creators to be open about how it works for them, what doesn't work, how they could do it better, what they've learned along the way. So I think anytime we can kind of open up that conversation and help each other learn and be better artists and better business people, that's helping the whole community. It's helping the whole business. It's helping just the field of comics and independent comics. So This has been Michel Fife's Creating Copra. And if you like this book, if you're a self-publisher, I would really appreciate if you check out some of my books as well. Series that I put together is Doomskull. It's about an ex-supervillain that works at the grocery store with his minion Bag Boy. I've got 3 issues of that. The 4th is on the way. I also have some horror zines that I've done, The Passenger and Sleepless Sights. I was also involved in a anthology, Holozine, Volume 5, of a bunch of Chicago cartoonists, Revenge of the Holozine. And I've got a 5-page story in there about Fish and Chip. I've also got Jiggly is one of my newer self-published books about a piece of gum that God spits out. And X-Ray, which is a collection of my 4-panel webcomics that you would see on Instagram, Webtoons, Tapastic, and the like. And then the newest hot off the presses thing that I've been involved in is Bootleg Bob's, which is a anthology, a little jam piece of a bunch of artists that came together to do a bunch of Bob's Burgers fan art. And I've got a 2-page story in here about Teddy rifling through Bob's trash and then getting attacked by King Trashmouth. Would love if you pick this up as well. I'll be putting this on my website. So thank you for checking out this video. Thank you for watching Dangerous Comics. I would really appreciate if you could leave a like, leave a comment, subscribe, tell your friends about the channel, and I hope to see you guys in the next episode. Thanks.